the college football playoff. Is BYU going to be the Big 12's representative? They very well could be. I did the Google machine today, and I said, who has the best chance to make the college football playoff out of the Big 12? And a good majority of these ESPN and national analysts chose BYU to represent this league. And I think what a lot of BYU fans would immediately say is, whoa, pump the brakes now. I'm not sure if those Cougars deserve all that love yet. And if BYU doesn't, who does? The win against Baylor was not very impressive. The first half was. The second half collapsed. You were lucky to get out of there with a win. And luck might not be the right word, but getting out of there with a win was something that was tough. It didn't seem in grasp completely there in the final moments against Baylor. There are still question marks around the BYU offense. Jake Retzlaff, the run game. There are still question marks about BYU. Defensively, Jay Hill, it might be the best defensive unit in the conference. It's right there with Utah at 1 and 2. Will you go to the college football playoff? I need you to stop deferring those questions. When someone says, hey, BYU is going to represent the Big 12 in the Big 12 championship, I at some point, I get it. I've been there as a fan of Baylor, as a fan growing up of Arkansas. Those are schools where you kind of expect to lose. You show up and you're like, yeah, we're not Alabama. We're not Georgia. We're not Ohio State. We know that something's probably going to go wrong at some point. And I understand why BYU fans on the whole think that way. They're just ready. I don't want to get my hopes up. No, you have to. At this point, you have to. You have to be. I've told you this. You got to be Santa Claus. You've killed the giant here in Kansas State. You now have to be Kansas State and win the rest of the way. That home game against Arizona, you got a bye week. I like your chances. Home game against Oklahoma State. I really like your chances. You go on the road against UCF. We just saw them lose terribly at home against Colorado. Then you go to Utah. We just saw them get pummeled. Their offense get pummeled by Arizona. You face Kansas at home. They're dilapidated. You go on the road against Arizona State. Okay, they're a salty football team, but very winnable. And then Houston, you face at home. You know you're going to win that game. The rest of the way for BYU, this school, this team, very well could be at 10 games. If this season ends 7-5, that is a total disappointment for where BYU is. And if you ask the college football playoff predictor jazz, the percentage thing, it would tell you the BYU has a 24% chance to make the CFP, and that's second in the conference to Iowa State, only to Iowa State. For the Cougs, what you have to do is establish some piece of the offense that's always going to be there. Is the passing game always going to be consistent? Is the running game always going to be consistent? What can we lean on? If Jake Retzlaff needs to throw the ball 33 times in one game, but that means you win all of those games, fine. If Jake Retzlaff needs to run the ball 10 times for 75 yards per game for you to win these games, fine. What is the secret sauce, the bread and butter that Aaron Roderick can keep going to, that well he can dip into? I'm not sure BYU has found that, and the offense doesn't play very complementary to the defense. You almost saw it fall apart against Baylor, where the defense is still giving its all. They're a little gassed. You give up a touchdown, and the offense is like, we'll go 3 and out. Third and medium? Let's just run the ball. Like, what? 3rd and 2 late, need to run the clock out? Let's throw it. Interception. Still question marks around BYU. I don't think it's a bad thing. Right now, in my book, they're the representative for the conference in the college football playoff. Iowa State's also right there. Rocco Beck, Abu Sama, Jalen Knoll. I keep saying those 3 names. I was on a, the plane train at the airport recently in Nashville. And there are 2 guys that didn't know each other in Iowa State gear. I walked up and was like, hey, Rocco Beck, Abu Sama, Jalen Knoll. Like, yeah, this guy gets it. Obviously, Jaden Higgins is also squarely in that conversation. It's a very good offense, and the offensive line has been there. And then the defense is there. Now, you were playing Houston, and their offense is bad, but you shut them out. And anytime you shut somebody out, that is impressive. This is the most complete team in the Big 12. It is. Offensively, analytically, you are a top 35 offense and a top 30 defense. You're sitting pretty even with each other. You only had 19 first downs against Houston, but 9 for 17 on third down. So you go, well, 19 first downs isn't that good. But hey, there was third down efficiency, third down success there. That's good. And 393 yards. That's good. Only had to throw the ball for 150 because the ground game picked up 240. Now, I know I'm just using this Houston game as a sample size, but this feels like what Iowa State is. Hey, we are going to put up 20 to 24, maybe 27, 28 points on the whole. That's fine. And we're going to use our defense to stomp you in the ground. And according to ESPN, what that's gotten them is the number one spot in the Big 12 when it comes to college football playoff odds. Now, interesting to note here, they have all of the schools listed that are in that top, basically, it kind of gives you a top 30-ish of teams. And Ole Miss has a 41% chance. It says Iowa State has a 25% chance. Indiana has a 40% chance. Boise State, 38%. UNLV, 31%. Those are more than Iowa State because those schools can win their respective conferences and make it in as the group of four. Missouri, a 33% chance. I'm looking at all of these percentages, this wall of schools. Texas and Alabama lead the way at 91% chance to make the college football playoff. And that 25% for Iowa State feels a little sparse. The reason being there are so many teams in the Big 12 that are in that pod of 5, 6, 7 competing still for a conference championship. The third team they include here, Kansas State. I have my questions about Kansas State. I don't have as many defensively. That's kind of the tell for me. When a team defensively is inept, at that point, it's tough to consider you a college football playoff contender or a school that I want to represent this league in the college football playoff. Kansas State doesn't have that problem. The defense isn't inept. You look at the blowout they suffered to BYU, I wouldn't put it on the defense. Special teams, sure. Turnovers and Avery Johnson kind of peeing down his leg, absolutely. Did the defense lose Kansas State that game? No. There was the middle 8, that 8-minute stretch in the middle of the game, hence middle 8, where you just couldn't really do anything right. Does that indict your defense for the entire game? Does that indict your defense for the entire season? No. And what did you show against Alan Bowman? And granted, it's Alan Bowman, who I've not been high on at all. What you showed is that Kansas State has a real defense that moving forward can be real good. For the Wildcats, who I had very high in my preseason rankings, the rest of this way, Colorado on the road is going to be very telling. We're going to learn a lot about both teams. That West Virginia game, that's very winnable now. The Kansas game, obviously. Houston, obviously. Then you host Arizona State and Cincinnati. You're the better team in all those games. I keep bringing this up. The Colorado game is the toughest one you've got in the next 6 before you go to Iowa State. This stretch, is where you make or break your college football playoff chances. And to me, I think Kansas State's going to make them. They could still be an at-large even with that loss to BYU, especially if BYU represents this conference in the Big 12 championship and ultimately in the college football playoff, which many people have them at the very top of that conversation. Coming up, is Cam Rising just a grift? What's going on here on Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day? Today's show is brought to you by Game Time. I love Game Time because I love sports. And I love going and watching live sports. I will be in attendance for UCF and Florida this weekend. I would love to see the Knights win the ball game. And Game Time is the one that got me there. They have super deals, great super deals. And in the app, you can see upcoming live events and your seat. So I go in. I have a curated deal to make it easier to find the best price on great seats. I can see the seats before I buy them, and I have the lowest price guaranteed. Event cancellation protection, job loss protection as well. You can also toggle a little feature that shows the all-in pricing. Yeah, no worry about fees. It just shows you the all-in pricing. Lowest price guaranteed, Game Time ticket coverage. Now you can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.